I could not be more excited for today's episode of the Real Stuff podcast. I'm bringing on my two favorite humans in the world, my brother Robbie and my twin sister Allie. I posted a question box on my Instagram asking all of you what you wanted us to chat about in this episode, and so we get into everything that you asked us. Everything from Rob's thoughts on having twins as sisters, whether or not he feels left out, how our parents raised us, why we think we've developed such a close bond, all of our different life stages that we're currently at, and if we ever feel jealous of one another or competitive with each other, how we each feel about everyone else's significant others, some of our most vivid childhood memories. We even do a really funny Who's Most Likely To game at the end, so stick around until the very end. Honestly, I am constantly awed by my siblings. They are both brilliant people. They are two of the nicest people I know. And they're not just nice like within our family unit or to their friends. These are people who are nice to everybody they meet. And bringing them on the podcast or, in the past, having brought them onto my YouTube channel, I am always awed by how articulate they are because they're both very social people. But I have to remember they don't do what I do for a job. Like, they're not used to being on camera. They're not used to being in podcasts, definitely. So it is really amazing to just listen to them speak and to hear how clearly they communicate. And I just love them. So I'm very excited for you to hear this one. Please, if you're loving the show, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. As always, if you're listening, take a screenshot of a moment in the podcast that is interesting to you. Either share it with a friend, share it on social media, tag us at Lucie B. Fink, at The Real Stuff Pod. My brother's at Rob J. Fink. I won't give Allie's handle because, as you'll hear in the episode, she doesn't want to be public at all. But I think you're going to like this one. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below in social media, or if you're watching on YouTube, drop them down there. We will reply, and we hope you enjoy. Here we go with the Fink siblings. Allie, Robbie, welcome to The Real Stuff. I don't want you guys to be nervous. This is going to be so much fun.
We're already nervous.
You're already nervous, I know. But listen, I just want to start off. I know that a lot of my followers already know the gist of who you two are. But can each of you just take a moment, we'll start with Rob, to introduce yourselves, share your age, share a little bit about your current life stage that you're at and your career path.
Sure, I'll start. My name is Rob, or Robbie, depending on which life stage that I met you at. I'm 34 years old. I live currently in Jersey City with my wife, Hannah, and our two dogs, Sadie and Theo. I work at Spotify. I've been in media and entertainment for, I'd say, about 7 years now. The big thing is, as you maybe can see, there's a little bit of a crib in the background here. We're expecting our first child, a daughter, in August. So a lot of nesting, a lot of preparation. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. Al, over to you.
My name is Allie. I am 31 years old and I live in the suburbs with my husband, Zach. I work in the financial services industry, which is what I've done since I've graduated back in 2014. And I am child-free currently, so we're living it up as dinks, as they say.
Dual income, no kids. I tell Allie every time I see her, just remember, you're a dink. Enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts.
I put on my stories, what do you want us to talk about on this sibling podcast episode? And probably the biggest question that was submitted over and over again was aimed at Rob. And it was a question about how it feels to be the brother of twins. And genuinely, one of the reasons I want to ask you this question is because there's an answer to this question that is just socially acceptable, like, oh, it's great or whatever. But I genuinely want to know if the two of us being twins and having the bond we have and the relationship we have and being two girls in the family has ever made you feel left out. People want to know if you have ever felt forgotten.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I didn't know that you posted the question box for people to submit questions. And interesting that that's the most popular thing that's come up so far. Like, thinking back to growing up, I cannot really remember a time, especially when we were younger, when I ever felt left out or definitely not forgotten. I think I always knew in some intuitive sense that you guys had a bond that was special and indescribable and something that is specific to twins and something that I could never really compete with, even though the word compete isn't really even appropriate here because I never felt like it was a competition. But I guess in a sense, the socially acceptable answer that you were just referring to is kind of my answer for 99.9% of my life. I mean, I will say it's interesting because more recently, and it's nothing that's ever upset me or made me feel like genuinely any sort of bad way, but I feel like there are, especially with you as a content creator and putting your life and your story out into the world, there are certain things that I've seen that I guess just like sting a little bit in in a mild way. You know, like the story about moving out of the house and all of the memories, and then I watch the video and I'm like not in it. I'm like, did I even live with you? Am I in this family? What's the deal? You know, Allie's wedding recap video, and it's almost funny because I don't know if I would even notice these things, but sometimes Hannah's like, "Hey, like, it looks like you weren't even in this video," and I'm like, "You're right, I'm not even in this video." So, again, I'm just saying this because it's the only thing I could possibly think of, and I'm not genuinely hurt or upset by it. But, you know, like I said, for 99.9% of my life, it was something that I acknowledged and was aware of and had a respect for, but never really felt hurt by or left out by.
And I get that 0.01%. Thank you for sharing that with me. And it has come to my attention, not just from you, but from some other people. I think it was around that time of the weddings or the moving out when I was posting a lot of content. And then I think I posted a story that was like, by the way, I have a brother too.
Oh, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I texted you and I was like, hey, do I exist or no?
Right.
I'm not really sure.
And so I posted something that reminded people about you. And I did get a DM that was like, wait, you have a brother? It's from someone who's probably been following for a while. So I want to formally apologize
feel
for any
validated.
time. Yeah, anytime I've made you feel, given my career and just the things I'm posting, like you don't exist. Because, and I'm sure Allie can attest to this, you've always existed for us. You've always been here for us. I think that it's interesting. We have this not only twin dynamic, but we also have the sister thing going on, which is maybe a little different from brother sister. But what I'd love to hear from each of our perspectives, maybe we'll start with Allie, is just the different unique bond. One thing I love about the three of us is that each pair within the three of us has a unique bond to share with just one solo other person. And they're all different. Like there's three different relationships going on here. So, Allie, can you just talk about how you generally feel about your relationship with me and then what's unique about your relationship that you share with Rob?
Yeah, my relationship with you, it's a little hard to like whittle down to just like one simple explanation because it's just obviously that of siblings and friendship and family, but it really is just like such a comfort in your presence and being with you that no words have to be exchanged, no like experience has to be shared. It's just like being with you or thinking of being with you or going places with you is just a level of grounding that I think is really hard to achieve with any other human. And it obviously stems from like all of our shared experiences and all of the different ways that we can relate to one another. But also we can just like look at each other and kind of take ourselves back to a moment in time and a memory that we shared together without even having to exchange words. So it's just like so pure in its form that it's just very hard to replicate with anyone. My relationship with Robbie is something that I consider myself so lucky to have, from obviously the standpoint of just like being the younger sister to this older brother who was always like so valued and appreciated by everyone. People always looked up to you. People always respected you. You were the cool guy, but you were nice to everyone. You're athletic. You're good looking. There's I think, always been so much admiration for you as a human in like all walks of life that you've been through. So there's that element of just like feeling so lucky to be like your little sister. But I don't know. I think like just being able to go through life with your guidance and knowing that I have you as like such an incredible sounding board and someone who I can really talk to like about any topic. I mean, there's nothing really that I wouldn't talk about with you, but I feel like over time and after we graduate or after I graduated college, I just feel like our bond has grown so much deeper past like just being siblings. And I feel like we started to talk about things that best friends would talk about with each other that like maybe was a little bit more awkward for us to talk about as like older brother, younger sister when we were growing up in school. And I just feel like we share so many more elements of friendship now.
And I feel similarly to how you feel because, you know, we obviously have this special twin thing. And then I have a relationship with Robbie. I don't even know if I'm calling you Rob or Robbie. Rob sounds so weird to me. You're Robbie to us.
He's always Robbie to us.
You're Robbie. But I mean, I have my own relationship with Robbie that is like my older brother relationship. But I'm curious from your standpoint, Robbie, how you feel about you have the two of us who are like both your younger sisters. We're both girls and you just have a unique relationship with each of us. So how do you classify the differences between those two relationships?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Al, that really hit. Good stuff. I mean, you never know. This is your first podcast.
Thanks.
It's interesting because I hear you saying, or Allie, I think you just said, growing up and looking up to me. And one thing that I think is shared across my relationship with both of you is, even though you're my younger sisters, I feel like I've always, especially, you know, post high school, let's say, I've always actually looked up to both of you in many ways. And I mean, I'll get into the specifics, and I think there are pretty strong differences between, you know, how that comes to life in my relationship with each of you. But the shared truth is that I admire and look up to both of you, and it's always kind of felt almost, I don't know, like a little bit weird that you're actually my younger sisters, because in a sense, I don't feel like you're both younger than me. I kind of feel like you're older than me in a weird way. So whatever that means.
Really?
Kind of. I mean, whatever. We can get into the specifics of what that means in terms of my relationship with each of you.
All right.
So Allie is someone who I feel like is my moral compass in life. And Lucie, maybe you can relate to this, but I just feel like Allie always knows what the right thing is and always does the right thing. She's probably the most genuine and thoughtful and kind person on planet Earth. And, you know, I always kind of
Nice.
assess and reflect on my own behavior and the way that I act in certain situations and stuff like that based on, you know, how would Allie act in this situation, because I really do look up to her so much in that way. And as she kind of said, we can just talk about anything, and I always feel like she's there for me, and whenever I'm going through something, she's checking in and she's asking how I'm doing, and I always try to do the same for her. So there's obviously, you know, there's a lot more I can say, but that's the big thing that comes to mind. And Lou, with you, I feel like I think back to when we were younger and we would both be staying up late when Allie was sleeping early, sneaking down to the kitchen for a late night snack and just like messing around, being silly, goofing off, joking about whatever. And that kind of feels like a microcosm to me for our relationship. I feel like you're the sillier one, the more unpredictable one, the stay up late one, the kind of more spontaneous one. And I mean, who knows if I've gotten that from you or you've gotten that from me, or we've just both kind of developed it together alongside one another. But that feels like a shared thing that we have. I also look up to you in terms of your career and what you've built and how you put yourself out there every juncture in your career, at every step, every new thing, whether it's, leaving a refinery and starting your own business, or more recently starting this podcast, I'm genuinely such a fan of it. And sometimes I ask myself, like, is this because this is my sister, or is this just because I am so drawn to what this person is putting out there in the world? And I've told you this before, but this podcast is literally my number one favorite podcast. I've listened to every single episode, and I just love hearing the conversations and the truths and the honesty that you draw out of people. It feels so raw and so real. It is the real stuff after all. But, as somebody who also in a very different way puts myself out there into the world and creates things, it's really inspiring to me. So I feel like that creativity and that kind of weirdness and wildness is a little bit of what defines our relationship.
Wow. Thank you both. Very candid, genuine. Just to tack on to the love fest we're throwing out here at the start of the podcast, I have to echo all of Allie's sentiments about Robbie, and specifically the looking up to you nature. It's so interesting how we all really do look up to each other, because my earliest memories of you, Robbie, are you being just this all-star person, but not just because you were popular and smart and athletic, but because you were so nice. And I actually remember one specific drama club boy that I had a huge crush on, who
he who shall be unnamed,
who was in your grade and was maybe not in the same crowd of friends that you were in, but he would come over to the house to hang out with me. And I just remember watching how nice you were to him. And I actually think he liked you more than he liked me. I think he liked the fact that this cool boy in his grade was being nice to him more than he cared about coming to hang out with me. But I was just so in awe of how you could be all of those things at once. And on top of it, the balance you have between the intelligence and the knowledge and the actual smartness level that you are, with how simultaneously normal and cool and social you are, is a very rare balance to strike.
I'm not normal.
You're a little normal. And then with Allie, I agree with everything you said. And I feel like we have, and all twins have, if they go through life the same way we did, this really indescribable life circumstance where every single circumstance we've been in, we've both experienced together through two separate eyes. And, we went to elementary school together, summer camp, college together. We did a lot of things together. So a lot of the experiences that you recall, I was standing right there watching it myself. And obviously little experiences shape who you are. And we've experienced a lot of the same things side by side. I just wanted to point out when Robbie was saying that Allie's, the most genuine, or I forget what word you were using, but I wanted to point out that
my moral compass.
Yes, the moral compass, and always knowing what's right and being genuine and being selfless. I wanted to point out that I think I also, maybe from being her sister and being in her friend group, I feel like I maybe have a view of Allie that you don't get of her. That is the side of Allie that's like, in a good way, selfish. The side that's like, no, I'm putting myself first. I'm not taking shit from anyone, all while being incredibly genuine, of course. But I think I do get, because we're in the same friend group and we've had the same upbringing and been in more of the same experiences, I have a little bit more insight into that in a way that you don't.
That makes sense. And it's funny because, well, first of all, just to respond to what you just said directly, I don't feel like Allie is a totally selfless person in the sense that she will always put others before herself to a fault, because I totally get what you're saying and you probably see it more, but I definitely see her as someone who's strong and who draws healthy boundaries for herself and makes sure that she and her family and whatever else is kind of taken care of before going out and doing things for other people. But I see the little windows of Allie getting pissed. Like whatever, it doesn't even matter what it's about, but something's frustrating to her, whether it's a family conversation or someone else outside the family who's doing something that's annoying. And I almost kind of love seeing that, because it reminds me that she actually is a real person who has limit to her patience. And it gives me even more respect for her, because it's not like she's some kind of like robot who's just constantly calm and at peace and, always just, all the things I mentioned before. But she's actually a real human who goes through some of the same frustrations and struggles that we all do.
Oh yeah, this girl can be ruthless, we all know.
I'm a real human.
A lot of questions came in about sibling rivalry and comparison, and specifically if there was anything that our parents did to foster us being close or to make it so we didn't feel pitted against each other, or if we just felt like naturally on our own volition we wanted to be close and liked each other. What do you guys think?
I'm sure they had something to do with it, right? The fact that the three of us have been so close over the course of our lives, really, at this point by choice, because we just seek each other out as so much more than siblings. There has to have been something that was, deeply rooted in the way that they raised us and the way that they emphasized what siblings are to one another. And it's interesting because mom's an only child, so she never really had that experience of her own. But yeah, I mean, I would think it's definitely a blend between the way that we were taught and the way that we just bonded with one another. I think that would obviously be a great question to ask mom and dad, because I would love to know the answer, because I would love to have, when I build a family, I would love to foster this type of closeness.
Yeah, what is the secret? I wish I knew. I guess I have two thoughts on this question. First of all, just thinking back to growing up, I can't pinpoint any like one specific event or one specific thing, but kind of more generally, I feel like there was always an emphasis on, we would always come down and have dinner together as a family. There was a lot of just things we did all together as a family trips and stuff like that. And I don't know, I don't have the best memory, but I've actually recently been cleaning out, before mom and dad moved out of the house, been cleaning out just like all this old stuff that I've kept over my life, and was kind of reminded, based on these like birthday letters that you guys wrote to me when we were like, I don't know, 10 years old, 12 years old, 15, 18, whatever it is, how this kind of feeling of just having a strong relationship and genuinely liking each other, I guess is one way to put it, goes really far back. I think we definitely got even closer in our adult life, kind of after the high school and college years and everything like that. But the roots of that are in our childhood. And who knows what they did other than, some of the more general togetherness things that I mentioned to foster that. But I would definitely like to know. But no, just one other thought that came to mind, and this is more of a thing that is just a testament to, I think, our relationship is, I see in other families, or I hear stories of siblings who genuinely wind up at odds with one another, and whether it's family drama or whether it's fighting over money, or stuff like that. I feel like there's all these things out there that are potential things to cause rifts between family members and siblings in particular, kind of given that they're going through life in a similar stage in a sense. And I just literally could not imagine that with either of you in any way, shape, or form. Like, I feel like we would sooner like give the others everything that we've had than fight over money, for example. Or, I can't remember the last real fight that we've had that's lasted for more than, like a 5-minute conversation where someone's just like not in a good mood and frustrated or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I've said about Allie before in videos where people have asked about our twin relationship and if I feel we're competitive. And I think I've used the word, we are the opposite of competitive, or like anti-jealous or anti-competitive, because I don't know how to describe how I feel aside than to say that I genuinely want more for the two of you than I want for myself. It wouldn't feel good to be set and happy in my life knowing that either of the two of you were struggling in any way. And going back to the childhood, I can remember times, if people are asking about, things that mom and dad did or said, I can remember some specific times when they really drilled into us and instilled that family comes first. Family is above all else. If you ever have a problem with one of your siblings, you talk to them. You don't ever talk behind their back to someone outside of the family. We're a unit here. I think there was a heavy emphasis on keeping an eye on each other and taking care of each other. And so that answers the question of if we ever fight, because I agree, I don't remember. I think I maybe tiff more with Allie, and our tiffs are more, they just turn into these long drawn out conversations where we clearly disagree on something, and then we just kind of laugh at the end of it. Like I remember one instance where we went under a blanket and made up, and we were with Michael's.
That's probably the last one I could remember though, and that was like 4 years ago.
I know, but we were just out. We were with Michael's whole family, and we were having kind of like a fight in front of people about something, and then we just went under a blanket to hash it out. And the thing is, we don't even have to. What?
Should we tell them what the fight was about?
Oh yeah, it was about how she was not even in her relationship yet. She was single. And it was me telling her that when she got married, that she had to have a bachelorette party.
To which I obviously insisted that I had no interest in one. And we got into a fight over it.
I was trying to be like, it's, I'm the maid of honor. I'm supposed to be the one celebrating you. What's it going to be like if I don't do anything for you? You did this whole thing in Aruba for me. What? And she was like, well, I don't want one. And I was like, well, I'm throwing you one. And it was actually turned into a pretty big fight.
Wow. This is actually this is an interesting window into the twin dynamic for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I never really get to see the fights between you guys. So like next time you have one, just let me know how it went.
But the thing is, when we make up from fights, it's not the way you would have to make up with a friend, where you'd have to acknowledge their pain and, I don't know, apologize and give them a big hug and whatever. It's like our eyes change the way we're looking at each other. We're just like, all right, my sword's down, we're done, and it's over, and we move on.
But there really aren't, this doesn't happen. Like we bicker, I would say, but really, truly, that's the last real disagreement or argument that I could remember us getting in, where we were just like not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, I agree. There hasn't been anything else.
What's the meanest thing that you've ever said to each other?
I don't.
Fuck you, bitch.
Wow.
I mean,
I don't think Allie's ever said anything mean to me, honestly.
No, but I would never say anything. Like, I would never do that.
She loves me so much.
I would never actually say anything mean to anyone that I love in my family, other than just like, shut up. Like, I don't want to talk to you, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
My twin sister, Allie, recently had some neck spine surgery, and her doctor told her, make sure when you get home from the hospital, you are staying hydrated. So I gave her a few of our Element electrolyte packets. She does not have them. She's never tried them before. And Michael and I over here are fully stocked up at all times because we have a subscription to Element. So I gave her a few packets. She put them on her counter, and she says she didn't touch them for a few days. But a couple days later, she texted me saying that just as she was having her husband change the bandage for the first time on her neck, she got a little woozy and lightheaded. And as soon as she started feeling like she was going to faint, she poured the Element packet into a glass of ice water and drank it. And she said it was like immediately she felt a lot better. So when I'm drinking Element, it's not typically for emergencies. Like I feel like I'm going to faint. I just use it as a tasty way to boost my hydration during the day. And I can't help but think if it had that effect for her in the moment, like literally made her go from feeling like she's going to faint to feeling good, just imagine what this is doing for your body when you're feeling good and how much it's just supporting you and helping you. Michael and I are absolutely obsessed with Element. We love all the flavors. My personal favorite, grapefruit salt, and the hot one, the chocolate salt that you put in hot water. So good. We drink at least one a day, each of us, and it's been amazing for staying hydrated during pregnancy. I cannot emphasize that enough. You can get a free sample pack with any Element drink purchase at drinklmnt.com/realstuff. And I highly recommend, if you haven't tried it yet, try out their new Element Sparkling, which is a 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. I used to just put the Element packets in seltzer and sparkling water, so now it's done for me. So tasty, so good. Again, go to drinklmnt.com/realstuff to get your free sample pack. On this note of, I think some of the areas that we've had these quote tiffs about are just areas where we are fundamentally different as people. And that leads me into how all three of us are at different stages of life. And I think it's been exaggerated in the past couple of years for me having a kid and being married a couple of years before both of you. And I would love to know from your standpoint, thoughts on everyone's different order of life events. That seems to be a big question that I get is, was Allie upset that you got married before her? How did your older brother feel about you having a kid before him? From my standpoint, and I was the first to do both of those things, so maybe I'm not the one to speak, but the order of things didn't really cross my mind. It was just a natural progression to the relationship I was in, but I'd love to hear if it ever crossed your guys' mind, specifically as older brother, but also specifically as the inline twin sister.
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, given how things have played out / are playing out, I got married a couple years after you, and we're expecting a baby now a couple years after Milo was born. It really hasn't crossed my mind. I can't say I would feel, if it was like you and Allie both were married with kids and I was single, I think that would be a different story, just given the extremity of the discrepancy in that situation and me being the older brother. But given that it's only just been, sort of in the scheme of life, kind of a negligible difference in terms of when we got married and going on a parenting journey and all that, it never really has crossed my mind. I guess one thing I would say is specifically thinking about Lucie, when I guess now thinking back on it, just because everything that you've been through, or your major kind of life milestones, like getting married and having a baby, it's just been the first one in the family. I just can't really put into words how emotional those moments were for me. Like, maybe you can dig up and share on your social media, like the pictures of me at your wedding. My face is just unrecognizably contorted.
Just
with
sobbing your eyes out.
Tears literally shooting perpendicularly off my face into the crowd. And I remember when Milo was born, it was what time? He's born at in the middle, 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
in the
2 a.m.
Yeah. And I woke up at 5 a.m. that day because I knew that it was kind of happening late at night, but I wouldn't probably know anything until the morning. But I woke up so excited and looked at my phone. I think it was at 5, and saw the first picture of Milo and just was utterly sobbing. So, and Allie, that's not to diminish your wedding or when you eventually have kids or anything like that, but I just think because it was the first one in the family, those just really slapped me around.
I don't know. It's obviously really easy from the outside to say oh my God, don't you compare yourself and where you are in life to your siblings. You were starting a family or you were pregnant starting a family. And I was, when I newly started dating Zach, my now husband, but it was never I never looked at it in a way that was threatening or upsetting or anything. It was just I don't know, to me, it was just another window for someone to look through to get to know me more, because they could see how excited I was for these other aspects of my life and these other things that my siblings were going through. When you were getting married, you were one of the first friends of ours that got married. So it was just such a new, exciting experience for all of us. It was it was the first wedding in the family. So the whole family was pouring their heart and soul into it. We were all so excited. And then, watching all of Robbie's journeys along the way has also just been something that I feel so lucky to say that I felt I've just been a part of along the way. We obviously had a lot to say through his dating journeys before he met Hannah, and we loved being so involved and hearing about things when he did meet Hannah, and receiving the news that they were expecting was such a crazy moment for us. And it's always just been another part of my life that I'm so excited to go through and so excited to experience as, the sister of the groom or the bride, or the aunt to the nephew or the future nieces, or, it's always just, it's always just been additive. I don't think it's ever been looking at it and saying, oh my God, when will I do that? Or how come I'm not married back in 2019 when you got, it just never was that way. And I think so much of that just does come from our pure, just like genuine excitement and joy for the other person's happiness and wanting whatever is making them happy.
I think the only moments when that comparison would creep in, correct me if I'm wrong, would have been during your lowest moments, like right when you went through a breakup, or I know there was some time when you were single, even before that relationship that you ended up not being in, that you were frustrated about the dating scene in New York and whatnot. And I think those are the only moments really when you would ever even look at a relationship I was in and feel any sort of way about it. But I think the only way you were viewing it was almost like that's what I want and that's what I'm looking for, not like I wish she didn't have that, or I'm upset that I'm not there.
No, like if anything, it was so helpful to have as an example, but also I never felt like alone in my journey because I always felt like I had the support of you guys and family. And like I said before, you were like the first one of our friends to get married. So there's so many people in our close inner circle were still like a lot
Single.
closer to where I was in life than they were where you were. So I never felt like I was on an island, just like lost going through it by myself. And like, I remember specifically like really leaning on Michael a lot during that time because like you said before, your relationship was something that I looked up to, and I saw the way that Michael treated you and the life that you guys were building together. And it wasn't like a point of envy, but it was like a way to just see something that was so successful and aspire to find my own version of that.
Allie said something a minute ago that at some point we're going to have to double click into. I believe it was, and your past girlfriends, we had things to say about those or something along those lines. So
no, that's not what I mean. I just mean like we loved when you say. I just mean we loved when you like started sharing that part of your life. Like it was such a change from the way that you had been sort of, in high school and in early college, where we felt like we kind of couldn't really break that barrier with you. And then all of a sudden you started like sharing with us. And that was, I don't know, sort of a turning point for us, I think. And it allowed us to just like share so much in your joy when it was just, we saw when it was so easy for you to share with us. And that's when we knew that it was really like the real deal.
The real stuff.
The moment Robbie would start talking about a girl, like our whole family is like, okay, everyone be quiet. He's talking. Let's listen. Let's get every last morsel of information out of him before he shuts his mouth.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but you're not like that anymore. Now you tell us everything and we don't even have to ask. We each also have very different relationships, not very different, but distinctive relationships with our parents. And, one thing that at least Allie and I have acknowledged between the two of us is, and something that mom and dad have acknowledged with me, is the difference. This is one area that I wouldn't say they compare us, but that this is maybe the only area that mom and dad have ever thrown out Allie's name to me in a comparative way, is how often Allie calls them versus how often I call to talk. And I know Allie has an incredibly close relationship with them. I can let you get into that, but I know she, talks to them daily, regularly. And I, on the other hand, am part of our family chat where I feel like I'm not always the most responsive one in the chat. And I feel like I could go multiple days without catching up with or connecting with or talking to mom and dad. And I still feel just as close. And that's one area that I feel we're different. And I don't know exactly where you lie, Robbie, on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely more similar to you, Lou, in that I definitely don't call them every day. It's on my mind a lot. Like I always kind of feel like I want to and should call them and talk to them more, especially like as we get older and time goes on. Like I just hate when I'll go like a week or two and I'm noticing like, oh wow, the only times that we were really talking was I needed some information or some, something more tactical and
Logistical.
yeah, logistical, exactly. Like I just hate looking back on those weeks and feeling that way because I don't like it. It doesn't. I don't like the way that makes me feel. So I feel like as time goes on, it's just even more on my mind that I want to just be calling just to check in and just to say hi and see how they're doing. But I certainly don't feel compelled to call every day or really anything close to every day. I'm more on the, once or maybe twice a week train here and there. Definitely texting and in touch constantly. But as far as actually jumping on the phone or FaceTiming, I feel like I'm probably more similar to where you're at versus where Allie's at.
And you, Al?
Yeah, I call them every day. It's just kind of part of my day. When I'm leaving work, I just get in the car and I just pick up the phone and I call them, and I do that before I put on my music or anything. It's interesting because it really is just so part of my day that I just feel like it would just be weird if I didn't talk to them on the phone one day. And it's not always both of them. It sometimes could be one or the other. But I also have even become that way, like with Zach's parents, for example. Like I'll pick up the phone and I just will call Zach's mom when I'm cooking dinner. He doesn't have to be here. It's just sort of just like a comfort to me to just like hear their voices and
That's so
talk through my
sweet.
day or whatever. We don't have to be talking about anything important, but it's just a part of the way that I live my daily life.
Where's my call?
Where's Michael?
Your call.
No, where's my call?
Where's your call? I was about to bring Michael up because I was about to say Michael is very close with his family and his parents, but he definitely, especially in his adulthood, has this sort of relationship with them where they give him, I guess, what I would classify as a lot of space, and he reaches out to them to touch base. And, he also doesn't have to have a topic to talk about, but he will talk to them once or twice a week and have a longer, more meaningful catch up rather than every day. And now that mom and dad live relatively close to me and I see them every week on a schedule, I like having that space and that time when it's just me, Michael, and Milo at home and I'm not talking to anyone. And especially with our family chat, I can tend to feel like the parents and the conversations that are happening with the wider families are a little bit overbearing on what I can potentially manage, given that I'm also trying to live my life in this house with this new family that I'm creating. And so that's kind of the way I feel. And it sometimes can feel to me like I'm being an angsty teen who's like, leave me alone. But I also I don't feel like I went through that stage as a teen. I feel like as a teen, I was more aligned with how you are, Allie. And now as an adult, I'm feeling it more of wanting to have that independence and that space, but also simultaneously feeling how you feel, Robbie, where if too much time goes by, then I feel bad, and acknowledging that they're getting older and not wanting them to feel like I'm pushing them aside. So it kind of goes back and forth for me.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a happy medium. I mean, like, picking up the phone and calling them for 3 minutes on my drive home from work isn't at all taking away from my independence in my relationship and the way that Zach and I are a couple in our own home, and it's not hindering like our lives as independents,
Mhm.
It's
Ooh,
just like
is this a tiff in the making right here?
no, I'm just saying, like, I understand where she's coming from in the sense of just like being in constant contact. But
Mhm.
I also just think, a few minutes of communication here and there isn't like breaking the barrier of your own family's little unit.
At least personally, I oftentimes find myself just overwhelmed with my phone and all the texts coming in. It's not just the family, but
Same.
anyone else I'm talking to. And like this will happen with mom, for example, just because she's a big texter. She'll be sending me something that I don't even know what she's talking about. And I'll like respond a few times, but then she'll keep going. And then like literally that's when I'll call because I'm like, I just don't want to be sitting here with my phone in my hand texting. I'd rather just have a quick conversation. And, in this digital world, there's Instagram, there's calling, there's texting, there's whatever else. I don't know. I feel like sometimes the easier path is just to kind of ignore everything and live your own life in the moment, which is great sometimes. But, then there's also finding the way to balance that with maintaining the relationships with people you care about, and ideally making plans to kind of get together in person too. So it's not just texting, phone calls, and FaceTime all the time.
This reminds me of something that I wanted to bring up before when we were talking about things that our parents maybe did to help us foster a close relationship with each other. More recently, and I'm curious if you guys have felt this, I've noticed recently that maybe it's because of my straying off and having independence and not texting or calling them as much, but I think mom particularly is extremely nervous that I'm not going to be as close with you guys anymore, because the amount of times recently that I'll be talking to mom about something and she'll bring up something that's happening with one of you, and it will happen to be something that like either I didn't know was happening or just because we hadn't gotten around to talking about it yet. She'll say to me, make sure to call him and talk to him about that. Or it was around Allie getting her spine surgery. She texted me being like, Allie's going for surgery tomorrow. Make sure to call her. Of course, I was going to call her. I also just spoke to her 2 seconds ago. And the time when you recently went to Guatemala, I don't think I knew you were going to Guatemala, but to explain our relationship, it would be very normal for me to see on your Instagram stories that you were in Guatemala and to DM you and be like, what are you doing in Guatemala? And that would be normal. And we still are as close as we are, even if I didn't know where you were going. And I was on the phone with her and she was like, yeah, Robbie's going to Guatemala tomorrow with his friends. And I was like, oh, I didn't know he's going there. Cool. And she's like, oh, his flight's going to take off soon. Call him before he gets on the flight. Like as if we're going to fall out of touch. And Mom, if you're listening, we're so close. Hopefully by this point in the podcast, you can hear how close we are and how much we love each other, that there's no risk of us drifting. But I think that's one recent funny thing I've noticed is that I think she has a deep-rooted fear of like the family falling apart.
Well, it's funny because I feel like half the time in our text chat when someone's like on the way to the airport, I'm like, where the fuck are you going? I don't
Exactly.
You're going somewhere, but that's not because we're not in touch or we're not close.
Yeah, we were just recently, Allie and I went to LA and Allie's talking about her trip and you're like, where are you going? She said, LA for Emily's wedding. Oh, is Lucie going too? Yeah, we're both going.
Yeah. I mean, so that's kind of normal, but it's actually funny. I feel like half the time when mom's like, oh, you better call Allie or check in with Lucie on this, like we've literally already talked. So I don't know. For me, I'm laughing as I'm hearing you say that because it's such a classic thing for her to do. And obviously she feels some sort of compulsion to make sure that we're checking in on each other and we're staying close. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, it either already happened or it was about to happen anyway. So it's really not necessary, but I don't know. It's just kind of a funny quirk at this point.
Yes.
It's funny, I don't get that from her because she knows that you'll have called.
I knew she wasn't telling Allie, make sure to call Lucie. She knows Allie's called me.
Yeah.
She has no doubts in Allie. Just us, though.
Speaking of our partners, you guys had this unique opportunity where you got to know my partner from when we were teens, all of us. And this is funny. Notoriously, Robbie and Michael knew each other first because they were on the same baseball team at one point. I knew both Michael's sister and your wife, Hannah, before you knew your wife, Hannah. And I knew Michael's sister before I knew Michael. And Robbie knew Zach, Allie's husband, before Zach knew Allie.
Wow, I never really thought about this, but
yeah,
it's very true.
So very interesting. But I would love to just hear anyone's thoughts on this matter.
It's actually perfect timing because Hannah just walked in and probably can hear this conversation.
Nice.
No, I'm not. I mean, I think you know how I feel about Hannah, but I'd actually be more curious to hear both of your perspective on her. Yeah, it is interesting that I at very different times in my life knew both of your husbands before you did. And I feel like my relationship now with both of them is very different. I mean, it's similar in some ways, but also very different. And I love them both. And I have every bit of confidence that they're the right partners for you both, and they feel 100% like part of the family. And I don't think I've ever gotten in an argument or fight at all with either of them. So that's all great. I feel like I look at Michael as sort of the quintessential mature, respectful adult man. And I feel like I always have, even like from the high school days. He always, struck me as someone who's like hyper calm, cool, and collected.
Very similar to Allie.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I guess so. Very even keeled and very balanced. And I've seen him get slightly worked up or slightly heated, but I just feel like he handles stress and pressure a lot better than your average person. I think he's so intelligent, and I love getting into conversations with him around all sorts of topics, whether it's what's going on in the world or what we're respectively working on in our jobs, or more recently about parenting and stuff like that. Yeah, I knew Zach in a very different capacity much later in life. He was a camp friend of one of my best friends, and also went to college with my friend Leah, who was my coworker in my first job. And I didn't really know him as well, I guess. I kind of like knew of him and was in similar circles, and I just saw him as like a cool guy who I would see around from time to time. But especially, in the past years since you guys have been together and gotten married, I've gotten a lot closer with him. And I feel like we share a lot in common in terms of the way that we look at the world, and in terms of some of our interests, whether it's around kind of the world of business, or whether it's around random physics topics or other kind of like social things happening in the world. I feel like we can always relate and have really interesting, honest conversations. I also think he's wildly intelligent. I mean, that's something that I feel about both of your partners. I remember the first time I listened to one of Zach's podcast interviews talking about like Costco or Trader Joe's or some other food related business.
Shout out to Zach, who is a podcast host as well.
Yeah. I mean, I literally was like on the floor. I'm like, this is the level of articulation and the depth of analysis is just on another level. So I don't know, just a bullet point on the list of things, but I feel like I appreciate them both a lot as parts of the family.
Yeah, I mean, Michael obviously has grown up with us, and he's been through so many different experiences in life with me, and he's watched me go through things. I've watched him go through things, and he's just like he's such a sensitive person, and he like is the best listener. He always will just sit down, calmly and thoughtfully just walk through whatever it is that is bugging me or stressing me or, scaring me. And he just brings such a level of calm to every situation that is, like that of a sibling. I just feel like every piece of advice I've ever sought from him, I just like always know that he'll come through. Like I always know that he is so sound in his thought processes, and he thinks through things so thoroughly and more completely than like any other human I've ever met, in a way that
Yes.
When I feel like I ask him a question on something, like I just feel so secure in knowing that I'm getting his guidance. And then Hannah, like, I don't know, think about it, how like Hannah was probably in like one of the most challenging situations possible, coming into this situation where she's just like, oh my God, he has twin sisters. Like, how am I ever gonna break that barrier of closeness with them? And how am I ever gonna like get in with them? And I don't say that because we're intimidating, because I don't think we are. And I think we've always been very welcoming to people who you care about. But it was just so easy with her from the beginning. It was never like, I never had to like remind myself like, oh my God, let me like flip on the switch and not be just like twins with Lucie, but like open the door for someone else. It was so effortless with her. And especially when she met mom and dad, obviously I think her relationship with both of our parents is great. But like when I saw her bond with dad, I don't know, it was just like she was so calm and like so she just acted like family. It was just so easy to welcome her and so comfortable to be around her and to love her that it was just such a perfect fit from the beginning, really.
Yeah, this is just one thing. I feel like obviously there's so much that I love about Hannah and our relationship, but one of the things that I certainly do not take for granted, and I'm kind of reminded from time to time because of other friends or their situations and how their significant others have integrated or not into their families, how lucky I am and how lucky we are, because I see that relationship and that connection that she has with really every person in the family. Like I'm pretty sure she texts with mom more than more than I do at this point. I see her, talking to each of you individually. She's often the one who's reminding me to call to check in on Allie and see how she's doing after surgery, or Lucie because she has some big thing coming up or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's something that I feel like was really important to me in a partner, someone who would feel a part of the family and would want to build relationships with the people in my family. And I feel like the level to which that's happened has been, almost more than I could have expected, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, Hannah is someone who I feel like would have been our friend if we had gone to college with her or if we were in high school with her. She's just that kind of person. The whole thing was seamless and easy. And I think I could speak for both myself and Allie when we say that there were people in the past that you dated that we felt like weren't warm towards us, or that we felt intimidated by, specifically maybe older girls or people that I would assume felt protective over you and felt a little bit jealous about your relationship with your sisters and wanted you to themselves. And Hannah's just the opposite of that, where she wants to bring us into things and she wants our opinion on your personal questions and your personal relationship details. And I will say Zach too, both of them have been, at least to me, as one of their in-laws, they've just been so supportive of me in a way that I didn't necessarily expect my siblings' partners to be. But specifically around things in my career, those are two people who are constantly texting me after I post something or after I do something, whether it's congratulating me on something or telling me their thoughts on if they enjoyed something that I posted. I mean, obviously for me, that's a big way that I can connect with people because I'm just sharing my life on social media all day. So to hear back from people is nice. Ever since the moment I met Zach, he would probably agree that early on in your relationship, specifically not too early, but around the time when he was asking my permission to propose to you, I was really hard on him when he asked my permission because I was a little scarred by your previous relationship ending so abruptly. And I was having, what's the word?
PTSD.
What's the word? PTSD a little, but I just was definitely nervous about what had happened to you happening again. So I was extremely hard on him in the questioning when he asked my permission, and he could not have handled it better. He was just like, listen, I get it. You went through this crazy situation and asked me all the questions. I'm open. I'm here. He was with me and Michael while we were changing Milo's diaper one night and putting him to bed, and he was at our apartment and he was just like, ask me anything you want, I'm an open book. And it was just a great rapport from the start. He also might remember that I one time early on in the relationship called him by your ex-boyfriend's name.
I don't remember that.
And he fully was like, it's cool, they sound similar, just like, it was like, don't think about it for another second. And I was like, oh my God, I could have just ruined this relationship. He gets deep into conversations, asks questions, and above all, just clearly is the perfect partner for you and supports you and shows up for you in all the ways that both of us would want your partner to show up for you. I want to talk money for a second. This isn't a standard podcast episode where I'm going around asking everyone's salaries and investment strategies, but I just want to discuss how open we are about money, because I think one thing that people were curious about is how openly do we talk about money? I think we have this interesting relationship with each other where our whole family is pretty open with money in that we all, use the same accountant. And if someone's getting a tax return, Dad will just maybe write it in the text chat like, hey, Rob, you got $500 coming your way. And we're all very open. I think we maybe have told each other our salaries or our incomes when we first got jobs. We would share, here's what my salary is, here's the bonus. But it's also a topic that now that we're all in our own relationships and we're all married and we have our unique situations with our partners, we don't necessarily talk about money all the time to each other, but it's one of those things where we could easily pick up the phone and call the other and ask any question about anything, including how much money someone has or what they're doing with a bank account, and it would just be totally easy and normal to discuss.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me is the fact that, I mean, just to say it, you both make more money than I do. And that could be something that, is a point of insecurity, or I'll just leave it at that. Could be something that's a point of insecurity. But I just, for whatever reason, don't feel that way and just feel nothing but happy for you both in your career success. And I mean, maybe part of it is just you've both been in different ways so generous to me and to really everyone in the family and around you in terms of like helping out with things just to take some stress off, like when it comes to planning our wedding, like deciding to just like pay for a big
piece. Allie, what happened there? We're at this wedding and all of a sudden Allie's just like casually drops to me that you guys weren't going to have a band and she just paid for the band.
No, it wasn't that they weren't going to have a band. It was just, I hadn't been through it at this time, but I know that like, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that like going through all the different expenses of a wedding is stressful when you're, working with a certain budget and you're trying to accommodate all the things that you want out of the wedding. And I know that music is other than the person he's marrying, music is the most important thing to Robbie. And I did not want him to have to compromise on what he wanted out of a wedding band or, wedding music in general, just because he was trying to fit the puzzle pieces together of the budget.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't ask me to split that with you.
Well, Lou, I don't know if you remember, but the fact of the matter is that you both stepped up and offered to pay for big things, big budget items for the wedding. Allie paid for the band, and you and Michael decided to pay for the videographer, which were both. She's like, "Oh yeah, I did."
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, look, the big picture here is that planning a wedding is stressful, and you have to make sacrifices and trade-offs, and those are both kind of big ticket items that cost a lot of money. And it might have been something that we had to, it's not like we weren't going to have music, or I don't know, we actually might have not had a videographer, but I think you both just didn't want us to make compromises in those areas. So just being the generous people that you were, kind of stepped up and made that clear. Going back to the question and the broader topic, I don't know, simply I think it just stems from our lack of any real jealousy and just overall underlying desire for the others to succeed and to do and have and achieve everything that they want to in life. So maybe in another world where there is more jealousy or there's more competition, things would be different, but it just feels like the vibe is good. I mean, money is just one example, but just having things and achieving things and making progress in life, whether it's career success or romantic success or other success in creative endeavors or whatever it might be. So to me, it all kind of stems from that.
Agreed. I wanted to go into just a few stories that have stuck out from our childhood and just see everyone's memory of it. I wrote down 3 that stood out when I was thinking about our relationship and growing up. Someone asked if we ever had issues with Robbie dating any of our friends or us dating any of his friends or whatever. And I had a memory of a sleepover party where Rob was interested in a friend of ours and she slept at our house. And we, me and Allie and this friend were sleeping in the playroom together. And both Allie and I heard her get up in the middle of the night and sneak out into your room. And Allie and I were like, "Psst, you up?" And the other was like, "Yeah." And we're like, "Did you see she left?" And We, I don't know, somehow got mom and dad involved and got them to get her out of your room. And it was a big rock in our friendship with this person. And, whatever. It's over now, but that's a story I remember. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, Rob, what the fuck you were doing.
Okay, first of all, mom and dad did not get her out of my room. There was no intervention.
There was, Allie, do you remember?
No. So, listen,
my memory kind of ends with her sneaking out into his room. I don't remember how.
Oh, I remember the end.
Resolved.
I remember the end. It was after she had returned back to the playroom.
Mm-hmm.
Mom poking her head in and saying, basically, like, you better stay where you are. I don't think your dad would be too happy to hear about this. Door close.
Oh, and I don't think I ever knew about that.
That's my memory.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, there was a visitor who came and went. And that was really where the story ended for me. I feel like maybe it came up like the next day or at some point in sort of like we know about this. I mean, it definitely came up between us, but I'm talking about with mom and dad, like we know about this, like don't ever fucking do that again type of a thing. But I mean, listen, first of all, we were in
high school,
maybe
early high school.
Early high school. Okay. Something like that. You're a young guy. You have sisters who are 2 years younger who have some attractive friends. There's going to be some situations, that wasn't the only one. We all know it.
Yeah, that wasn't the only one.
That was the only sneaky sleepover visit, I'm happy to say. But yeah, it was, at least for me, it wasn't as contentious or of a negative thing as maybe you might think. Like maybe you guys were like kind of pissed about a little thing here and there, but I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe you were way more pissed.
No, I think we were more. I think we were more pissed at the friend.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, I don't think we really took it to you.
We didn't really blame you. Allie's right. It was more about our feelings about the friend. We felt like that was a major form of betrayal. And listen, a lot of our friends growing up, both in high school and middle school and camp and wherever we were, talked about you and like wanted to, I don't know how to say it, but felt like it would be fun to be with you. And
well, that's your.
I feel like we listen. There were a few of our friends that it just wouldn't have ever happened with, but I think our one friend, I'm going to shout her out, Hannah Cates, not your wife Hannah, but our best friend from day one, was kind of the only person who would tell us that she thought you were attractive. And she definitely at some point went through a phase of like, it would be great if I could marry him because then we could all be sisters. And Allie and I agreed with that, but she would never have touched you with a 10-foot pole because she was so committed to us. Whereas some of the other friends, it's not like they were just friends with us to get to you, but they 100%, if given the shot, would dump us for you. And there were very few friends in our lives that we felt like were safe from your wrath.
Well, if I remember correctly, there was like a little bit of I feel awkward even saying this, but when it came to the St. Vincent's dance, the dance in our high school where the freshman girls got to ask any guy in high school to go to the dance, I remember there was a little bit of I don't know if competition is the right word, but
a fight over you.
Between, I think that was the time period when Hannah Cates maybe was saying some of that stuff. There was never any like actual romantic.
Everyone's gonna go type in Hannah Cates to my Instagram.
No, because I always also looked at like there were certain of your friends, including her, and there's others who I'm just out of, I don't know, privacy, not going to start naming people, but there was the friends who I looked at more as, quasi little sisters than anything else because of how close they were to you guys and how often they were around and part of the family. So whether or not I thought they were attractive or whatever, like they were just too much like family members to me to ever have any sort of romantic connection. And Hannah definitely was in that bucket. Then there's others who maybe, I felt like they weren't that close. It wasn't It's more debatable.
I'm not really one to talk because I absolutely wanted to marry your best friend.
Yes, that's true.
Up until about 8th grade. And yeah, absolutely would have thrown you way under the bus for that.
Good
All
to
right.
know.
Great chat. That's one story I remember. Another story I remember is when you got your concussion, Robbie, and you were at a bar mitzvah and you put on one of those sumo suits, didn't wear the helmet, and then someone knocked you over and your head smacked on the concrete. And Allie and I were actually home alone that night. We were lying in mom and dad's bed watching a movie because mom and dad were at the bar mitzvah with you. And we get a call from them that they're following you in an ambulance to the hospital because you hit your head and you have a concussion. And I remember our first question was, is he going to be okay? And I remember very clearly them saying, we don't know if he's going to make it. We had a moment where we were like, our brother's about to die. And I feel like it brought us closer. How do you feel about this, Al?
Like it brought us closer? Like us with Robbie or me with you?
No. Us with Robbie. I think it just brought all of us closer. But it's a defining moment of like, wow, we almost lost him.
Yeah, I my memory doesn't really recall it that way. Like I don't see it as like, oh my God, this was like a pivotal moment where we were like waiting with bated breath to figure out if our brother was going to survive. I don't really see it that way, but I do vividly remember it. Is there lightning behind you, Rob? Like what is going on?
Oh yeah, there's a thunderstorm happening for sure.
Wow, your whole window's flashing blue.
Yeah, that was cool.
So yeah, I don't remember it quite that way, but I do remember it very vividly. I remember picking up the phone. I remember them saying they're going to the hospital. I remember them saying the word subdural hematoma and us like Googling and freaking out. Was Google a thing?
Did we even have Google?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was in like 7th grade.
You were in 8th grade.
I definitely remember it being traumatic and the memory is pretty vivid, but I don't view it as like this was a life-changing moment. And when we found out that Rob came home from the hospital, we were like, kissing the ground that his feet walked on because we didn't think he was going to make it.
I definitely had a fleeting moment where I thought he wasn't going to make it.
Allie just said subdural hematoma, which I just wanted to clarify because this wasn't just like, your everyday run-of-the-mill concussion, like you bonked your head and you have a headache. I remember the experience really vividly, obviously, just given how extreme the circumstance was for anything I'd really gone through at that point in my life. But, I hit the back of my head really hard. It was basically a concrete floor with a thin carpet. And over the course of the next 5 minutes, I just remember my body utterly one step at a time, shutting down. My feet went numb, my legs went numb. The bottom half of my body was paralyzed. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I started vomiting. Basically, I just felt like I was dying. And
I don't even know if I know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, I was in the hospital for a few days. Subdural hematoma, for those who don't know, is a layer of bleeding between your brain and your skull that puts pressure on different areas of your brain that, interrupts or affects your brain functioning. That's how Johnny died. One of my best friends who died in 2013 had a fall down flight of stairs, and ironically, in a sick way, that's what ultimately caused him to pass. So it's a very serious thing that, obviously our parents didn't know what was happening at the time. It probably looked really bad. I'm trying to think if I were in their position, you guys are 11 years old or something, and I call you on the phone. Am I answering that question saying we don't know if he's going to make it? Or am I saying, oh yeah, no, everything's fine. Don't worry. We'll figure it out. So
they definitely didn't say that.
I didn't know that. And that's
I think they were in utter panic.
And it was also when they were following you in the ambulance. So they maybe didn't even know about the bleeding yet, but they just genuinely didn't know if you were alive.
Yeah, it was scary. Luckily there was no surgery. Sometimes you need to drill a hole in someone's head to relieve the pressure. I didn't need that. I don't know. We always joke that it may have, that's sort of that's why I'm the way I am type of a thing. But no, in all seriousness, I was very lucky because there were no long-term consequences of that.
Very much so. Speaking of heads, I was kicked in the head. This is my next story. This is my next story. And I obviously have my own recollection of the story, but Allie actually wasn't there. She was up in the hotel room. We were on a family vacation. Rob, as the older brother who was responsible for me in this moment and witnessed this unfolding and heard everything that I told you that had happened, can you tell the story from your perspective?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just in Aruba with Hannah, and as we're kind of walking around, I'm like telling her all these stories. This is where this happened. This is where Lucie got kicked in the head. She's like, whoa, what? Lucie got kicked in the head. Yeah, honestly, this is one of those stories where I remember the story, and I don't think I actually remember the event.
Because you didn't see the event.
Yeah, I mean, you could have told me that I saw it, and I would have believed you. My brain has created some version of this story that has played through. But I know where we were. We were down sort of where the smoothie bar meets the beach type of an area where they, toward the end of the day, kind of stack up the beach chairs. It was dark. It was probably, I don't know, like 8, 9 p.m., like not too late. Or maybe it was even, it could have been earlier, but I remember it was either dark or getting dark. And some like drunk random guy who was wandering the beach, like talking to himself, being unpredictable and belligerent, just like swung his leg in the air and kicked you in the head for no reason. Like, isn't that basically what happened?
We were on the beach. It was me and a bunch of your friends, and we were playing kind of a hide and seek dodgeball type thing where people were hiding behind these stacks of pool chairs. And I was hiding. At this point, I felt very safe in Aruba to be by myself standing by the towel hut. And I was kind of crouching down, hiding so that I didn't get dodgeball thrown at me. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that there was a person there. And I didn't look at the person, but I just like registered there was a person kind of near me and what looked like some sort of structure in front of him. And I think in hindsight, if you would have asked me what I thought it was, I think my brain just told me that it was a person sitting with a baby carriage in front of them. Like it was a big thing in front of them. Turns out the big thing was a stack of beers, like a pyramid of beers. And the person just looked over at me and walked over and just drop kicked me in the head with all their might. And I just went flying across the beach, was all of a sudden, didn't even see it happening, just kind of saw a foot coming at me and then felt my probably 40-pound frame flying. And then I look back and it's like a stumbling teenager, an American, with all these beers and clearly just drunk, who then just like wandered off. And I think I was just so shook by the kick. It didn't hurt that much. I mean, it probably hurt, but I was less worried about how I felt and more fearful for my life, and ran over to wherever you and your friends were and sort of told you what had happened. And I just remember there being this whole flurry of you and your friends who were probably, I don't know, 11 at the time, but I felt like you guys were parents, and you guys like ushered me off the beach and you're like, hurry up, run, he could have a gun. I remember someone saying he could have a gun, and I was just, all of a sudden, my image of this safe island and this place that we go every year was definitely tainted and shattered. And we, ran up to the hotel lobby, had to have the hotel call the restaurant where mom and dad were. I think it was like before cell phones. And mom and dad came back, and we had to send the hotel security looking for this guy. They ultimately told us that they found him. And whether or not it's true, they told me that they tripped him and he hit his head before he was locked up in jail for the night. And I felt safe for a fleeting moment. But that to me was a real memory of you, Robbie, because it was a moment of, where's my brother? I need to find my brother. I need to stay with him. And, I think from that moment forward, I was definitely more afraid going out at night without being close to you.
It's funny that you're saying it was a teenager. Like in my mind, it was some like fully grown like a Aruban man who was wasted on the beach, like on drugs.
No, I think it was like
kicking people.
A white American, like 16-year-old.
Wow. Who knew?
Yeah. Someone suggested that we end with a little section of who's most likely to. So I've pulled together a few questions, and I figure we'll just go in a circle and say the person that we think.
That's fun.
Allie will say it first, then Robbie, then me.
Okay.
All right. Who's most likely to get arrested?
Robbie.
Me.
Yeah, that's my answer too. It's definitely you.
Well, hopefully not anymore, but at some point in life.
Yeah, not now.
Who's most likely to be picky about their food?
Me.
Yeah, Allie.
Allie. I was going to say
I feel
Allie.
like we should have like everyone writes the name down and then
Yeah,
shows
so we
it.
say it at the same time or something.
Well, I was going to do that, but some people are listening and not watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's too easy to be influenced by what other people
Well,
say.
should we all say it at the same time?
Yeah, let's do like a 1, 2, 3, and then we could say who we actually
Okay.
said.
Okay, so
And then we
say
can
the
clarify
name.
who said what.
We'll say the name even if it's you.
Yeah. Okay. Who's most likely to be the most sensitive? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Allie.
Okay, we all said Allie. Who's most likely to be the biggest Taylor Swift fan of the crew? 1, 2, 3. Allie. Who is most likely to win the Nobel Prize? 1, 2, 3.
Lucie.
Robbie. Wait. Who did everyone say?
I said
You said
Lucy, but it
Lucy.
was hard.
You said
I
me?
was-
Isn't
I
the
was
Nobel
thinking,
Prize like physics?
I was thinking like the Nobel Peace Prize or
Well,
something
yeah,
like that.
same, but I was going to ask you to clarify like what for.
Oh, I
Like
guess
science?
I don't exactly know. I was just thinking Robbie was a physics major and he's very smart.
Yeah, I don't know. We maybe should.
Yeah, I was thinking a more like humanitarian prize.
That's what I
In
was
my mind.
thinking, but I don't know what the right answer is.
Okay. Who's most likely to be in the CIA or secretly be a spy? 1, 2, 3.
Robbie.
Robbie. Wait, I said me. What did you guys say?
I said you.
I said Allie.
A spy?
Wow, interesting.
Well, I just feel like Allie could, first of all, she's like in this finance world. She knows all this lingo we don't know. And I feel like she would keep things under wraps really well.
She knows all this lingo we don't know.
So
She does.
irrelevant.
You just know a lot about the world because you know about the financial markets.
I think Robbie knows more about the world than I do.
You may never know.
Who is most likely to join a cult? 1, 2, 3.
Lucy.
Robbie.
All right, both me and Allie said Lucy, and then Robbie said himself.
Yeah, I don't know. I sometimes when I find myself watching, the documentaries about whether it's Wild Country or whatever else,
You're
I
like,
kind of
I
find
could be
myself.
there.
Yeah, I kind of find myself thinking, like if I were there in that moment, I could see myself doing this.
I too feel like I could get swept away in the hoopla.
Yeah, I see you being swept.
I think I could join like a naked community.
I see you joining like a kumbaya, like, that kind of cult.
Oh, really?
Like a live with the earth.
Oh yeah, I would love to live on like a shared community. All right, I have 4 more here because I know Allie wants to go to bed.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, just like my neck hurts from sitting here this whole time.
Okay. Who is most likely to be a low-key conspiracy theorist? 1, 2, 3. Robbie.
But not low key, just conspiracy.
A high key.
I don't like the word conspiracy because it's just one of those words that has a certain connotation. And as soon as you hear it, you think like, oh, tinfoil hat, like crazy person locked away, like with Post-it notes and string all over their wall. But I do believe that there's a lot about the way the world works, whether it's in the corporate world or
The government.
Yes, the government.
The aliens.
The aliens, of course, that, there's a vested interest in people just believing a certain narrative, a certain version of the world. And the truth is much more complex and often much more controversial in a certain way. So yeah. I'm definitely someone who is interested in that stuff. So yes, conspiracy theorist.
So we all agree it's you. Who is most likely to become the president of the U.S.? 1, 2, 3.
Lucy.
Me? You guys think they'd accept a president who has an article on the Daily Mail about her vagina?
I don't like to be in the public. I would never.
Yeah, I think Allie could do it because she's a genius and because she's a great people person, but I just don't think she would want to.
No.
Listen, neither would I. I wouldn't want to be the president. I don't know anything about world politics. I think Allie has a cleaner track record that she's more likely to get accepted.
You you don't need to know about politics and the world to be president these days. Don't you know?
Oh, damn. Wow. Okay. So should I run?
Yeah, consider it. I'd
Wow.
vote.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Who's most likely to spend their Saturday morning volunteering? 1, 2, 3.
Lucie.
Lucie. Yay. We all said me. I love that for me.
Such a good person.
Such a good person, but it's like partially because Michael would take me there. All right. Last question. This is a big one. Who is most likely to sell pictures of their feet for fun? 1,
What?
2.
I don't know.
1, 2, 3.
Lucie.
Robbie.
Nobody is purchasing my feet.
Okay, Robbie, but just to clear the air
For
here.
fun? Like, for fun?
Yeah.
For money.
Oh, I thought you said for fun.
I did say for fun, but I meant like for cash.
Yeah, I mean, if people are willing to pay, absolutely. I would be
Exactly.
cash in.
Okay, quick background. I heard on a podcast somewhere that everyone who has a social media following has a Wiki Feet profile. So I, of course, was like, well, I never made one of those for myself, but let me type in Lucie Fink Wiki Feet and see. And of course, I have over 100 5-star ratings on my feet. And someone has created a Wiki Feet profile for me, and it includes every single photo I've ever put on my Instagram feed, on my Instagram stories, screenshots from YouTube videos where my bare naked feet are visible in the photos.
I'm sick.
And I found this, felt a little violated, and then if you know, you know, and you start seeing my Instagram stories. Recently, I've been putting emojis over my toes because no one needs more Wiki Feet content. But I started getting DMs of people asking how much money for feet pics. And I said to both of you, LOL, I'm never selling my feet pics. This is disturbing. And I heard from both of you, we'll sell our feet. Let us know how much.
Send them our way.
So I did say Robbie because I think he's more likely to actually sell the photo.
I actually
both
never
of you-
would. I would feel so personally violated by people paying to see photos of my feet, but it's an easy way to make cash.
You know, it's funny. First of all, I don't think there's a market for men's feet, unfortunately, especially feet that look like mine. But
No, you have nice feet.
oh wow, thanks.
Let's make a profile and see what the world
If
thinks.
there were, I wouldn't hesitate for a single moment.
Really?
Like, I don't really care. Like, I don't feel like they're a private part. I'll walk around barefoot. Like, if people want to look at my feet, especially if, like, I don't know, I don't want my face in them because that makes it weird. But if it's just my feet, like, take all the feet pics you want. If you're paying for them, let's go.
So
My
if
Venmo
you were
at Robbie-Fink, I will gladly accept. Now that I have a platform, I will accept Venmo for feet any day.
So if you were me and you got a DM from user 49278 who said how much for feet pics, would you actually make a transaction?
I would probably throw out some ridiculously high number, and I would
See
think,
what you could get.
On one hand, maybe they accept it, and I literally send a stranger a picture of my feet that I literally couldn't care less if it circulates the internet, and I get money. It's like $1,000. You know, on the other hand, it's just a hilarious conversation that is entertaining to me. So it's a win-win in my mind.
Okay, well, that's why you are most likely to sell pictures of your feet for money.
Yes, but the money piece is crucial because you said for fun, and I'm not doing this for fun.
I meant for cash. Siblings, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for taking your time and for taking your night and for joining us in the show. If anyone wants to follow them, actually, I think Allie's gone private.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she's gone private with her
I'm trying to
15,000 followers.
I'm trying to shed people.
I'm
I'm
public.
trying to just
and-
bring it back to just the people who know me. So no offense to those people if your requests are just outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're interested in following Allie, just follow me instead. I'll post pictures of her from time to time. My Instagram is at RobJFink.
Yes.
But more importantly, I'm actually shocked that we haven't talked about this, but I have a band. It's called East Love. The theme song to this podcast is actually one of our songs. It's called Rolling Stone. We're at East Love Music on Instagram. We're on Spotify. We're on all the platforms. So There's my little
And if you
plug.
want to hear the full song of Rolling Stone, it's been linked in every show notes episode from this podcast thus far.
Sorry, I've also recently launched Rob Fink, the artist, as well. I don't have a separate Instagram for that, but on Spotify, you can find me there. It's my first release, which was the song I played at my wedding called Every Little Moment.
Amazing. And I will link that down in the show notes too, along with Robbie's profile. Don't follow Allie, but you will see her a little bit on our profiles. And love you two so much. Thanks for coming on. Catch you on the flip side, motherfuckers.
Love you.
Love you guys. Don't forget to call mom and dad.
Thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Stuff. I'm Lucie Fink. Don't forget to follow the show on social media at The Real Stuff Pod. And if you're liking these episodes, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written review. It helps the show so much. And if you're feeling called to come on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. We'll see you next week for another intimate conversation on The Real Stuff.